Okay, so hi, Janine Pointer back with the Lynn Institute, and I have with me again Steve Petty, our Executive Vice
Right.
President, and Dr. Chan Hellman. And we have more to talk about with the subject of hope today. So, Steve, I know you had some questions for Dr. Hellman, and just invite you to go ahead and have that conversation.
Great, great. Dr. Hellman, thank you again for joining us. We greatly appreciate your time very much.
Thank you.
You know, during this isolation time, you've cited in your book that hope thrives with friends, cheerleaders, positive relationships that encourage us. So how can we keep this support going during this equation and support each other in times of social distancing? This is really strange for a lot of us. How do we continue on with those type of relationships?
Sure, thank you. I think that's a great question. So first of all, hope is a social gift. And earlier we talked about the key components of hope being about goals, pathway, and willpower. But hope is really derived in relationships, the relationships that we have with others. It is nurtured from the time we're very young in our relationships. And so this idea of social distancing and sheltering in place and being encouraged to stay home can be a little bit of a challenge in the short term of that. But what has really been interesting and I think exciting to watch is we're starting to see in social media, in our local news station, these fantastic models of hope. What I might refer to as hope heroes. And so these are individuals who have found just amazing and creative solutions to some of these barriers. So social media, for instance, just like now, we're able to use this technology to connect with each other, to maintain those relationships. Clearly, it's not the same as being in the same room, but it does maintain our connectedness in the short term. I've been watching where people are doing drive-by parades for children who are having birthdays, so we're still able to have that communication that, first of all, that we matter, that other people are thinking about us and considering ourselves. So there's been some really amazing strategies. I've noticed every day I go for a walk or a run, and I see that children in the neighborhood have written hopeful notes in chalk. And those are just wonderful ways to stay connected.
It is. And it's amazing how innovative and, like you said, creative people are being on the social distancing, and then just churches having services. And like you said, the birthdays, having that innovative way to still connect and to keep people hopeful, I guess you would say. But is there anything we can do to help mitigate or buffer the trauma that we may be experiencing and instead learn and really cultivate hope during this pandemic, something that we have not seen in our lifetimes? And how do we cope with that? How do we cultivate hope during such a stressful time?
Sure. And I think part of that is we have to remember that while this is a new experience for all of us, this pandemic. Right. I think it's also important for us all to recognize and to remember that as communities, as cities, as nations, we have overcome significant adversity in the past. For us, 9/11 in our lifetime, to be sure, the recession, all of these really difficult times. And we've overcome them not just in a way of bouncing back, but in a way that, for instance, our capacity to fly, although mitigated a little bit right now, but we have a much safer system today. We will overcome this. So I think we have to remember how resilient we are as a people, and we are creative, and we will find these solutions.
Great, great. And in a time when we can't control many things like this, you've talked about goals in the past. Now, should our goals, and you talk about this in your book, should our goals and pathways and willpower be focused on the short term, something smaller that we feel like we can really accomplish? Or what goals, what should we do so we can feel like we have control, even though we don't know how long this whole pandemic isolation is going to be? How do we keep that feeling that we do have some kind of control and that we can make some kind of goals in the short term?
Great, great. So one strategy that I might recommend is for the listener, or for each of us, for instance, to identify those important domains in our life: family, work, leisure, spirituality, whatever those domains are that are important to us. And then to sit down and take some pretty intentional time to really think about what are the goals that we have in each of those domains, say this week. And just focus on those short term, but short term within those domains that are important to us. And then to sit down and start to consider strategies. Like last time I made the comment that hope begets hope. And so as we start to experience in each of those domains these progress towards our goals, that idea that hope begets hope will help us understand and experience the capacity to thrive. One of the things that science tells us in hope is that hope is the single best predictor of our capacity to thrive. So nurturing it every day will pay off in the long run.
Great. And how is nurturing that? What would you say to somebody? How do we nurture that? Those folks that are working from home, that are in with their children, what are some of those thoughts that you might like to share?
Sure. So let's focus on the children for a moment, and how do we nurture that? So in Oklahoma, school started back yesterday virtually. And so I think finding ways to help children re-enter into that structured day, finding specific times to engage in those activities, setting a schedule for those will be quite helpful. Stories are a great way to help nurture hope in children. We can sit with children, read a little bit of a story, start to talk about goals, the pathways that the characters are using, that kind of thing.
Great, great. Well, this has been great, Dr. Hellman. Greatly appreciate it. I'm going to turn it back over to Janine.
I have one last question as it relates to, you were talking about the history of all of us and the history of overcoming adversity and how we have done that and how we come together as nations and as communities. My question is, last time we talked, you talked about that hope is taught. So that means, in my opinion, and I'm not the academic here, but it feels like what you were saying is, if it's taught, it's inside of me. It's something that has become part of me. And so is that what begins to happen? And the reason that then we can call upon what you said, that we can overcome, is because the hope that came inside of us comes back to address this adversity that we're in. Am I saying that correctly?
Yeah, so as we begin to remember times that we've overcome adversity in our life, we start to, in fact, what I would encourage people to do is to think about a time in the past where you've overcome something really difficult in your life personally, and to really sit down and think about, well, what were the pathways that I used to do that? How did I overcome some of those barriers to do that? Because what you're really starting to experience is that there are significant components around us that we have control over, that we can pursue a better future.
Okay. Just a reminder to all of you, Dr. Chan Hellman's book, Hope Rising. It's a wonderful read. You can get it on Amazon.com, or you can get it at Barnes & Noble's website. There are several places that it's available. It's wonderful. And what I love about this book is, not only does Dr. Hellman talk about the things we're talking about today, but he gives real life story after story in the book that will encourage you as you pursue hope, and will show you how people integrated hope into their lives with the goals, pathways, and willpower. So I really encourage you, some of us have some time to read this, and we're searching for ways to look about hoping and developing hope within this situation. So I really encourage you to get this book from Amazon, and you will love it. Thank you for joining us again today for this segment, and we will be back with another segment soon. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.
Thank you.